Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with an awesome new knife consult on the We Knives Arrakis, designed by Elijah Isham. I've done a number of videos on knives designed by Elijah, and I've even met Elijah. He's a really cool guy. So it's fun for me to get these knives in hand that were designed by him because his designs are really very different than traditional knife designers. He is really what I would call a modern knife designer in the very truest sense. His designs really break the mold from traditional knife designs, and it's something that some people are uncomfortable with. And this knife really embodies all of those things that trigger all of the people like that. So we're going to go ahead and talk about this knife. Now, there is no way to talk about the Arrakis without mentioning first the eschaton, which is sort of the bigger, more elaborate version of this knife that came out first. We Knives took on that project, and this is sort of the what I would call toned down version of that knife. I have not reviewed the eschaton. I handled a couple of them, but never got a chance to get it in front of the camera. I wanted to thank my patron Jacob for sending this along. I'm really lucky to have a successful Patreon going on with some really dedicated friends that have contributed to this channel. I get a nice little boost to the channel, and I'm able to take on new knives, buy new knives for review. I've done quite a few of them, including the Spyderco Subvert right here. So thank you to all my patrons. For more information, go to patreon.com/Dr. Frunkey and maybe see if you can help me out. But let's take a look here at the Arrakis. This is a truly unique design that We Knives picked up from one of Elijah's earlier knife sketches. It is truly off the wall and a very, very unique design. And I wanted to break this down and show how impressive this is in terms of its build quality and everything else. Now, some people are going to immediately say this thing looks ridiculous. What is the difference between that knife and this knife? Yes, this is the Boker Magnum Mermaid knife right here, the legendary knife right here. This was actually a Christmas gift from my good friend Ian at CMF Metalworks over there. This is a Secret Santa, part of a package that he sent. So thanks, Ian, for sending this along. But I bring this knife out because it is absolutely ridiculous. This is the definition of what some would call the gas station knife. Now, looking at the Arrakis, some people are going to profile this knife as the same as this knife because of what it looks like. And it is really an extreme looking, weird looking, bionic kind of a thing. And that really is the wrong assessment. It's very important to understand that We Knives really broke the mold with the eschaton and now the Arrakis in terms of how they've built these knives and the level of technology and productivity that has been put into these. So let's go ahead and get some vital signs here on the Arrakis so we can begin to understand what we're looking at. Up front, you are going to be getting a 3.5-inch blade of M390 steel, about 4 inches to the pivot and about 8.1 inches of overall length. The handle is coming in at 4.5 inches with an effective grip area just over 4 inches. Really, if you extend up to that choil, you get close to 4.6 inches. So it's a very unique design. Elijah's ergonomics often look on the surface like they'd be uncomfortable, but once you put it in hand, it's actually quite a nice thing. I'm going to bring out another couple of common knives for a size comparison. Here is the Spyderco Paramilitary 2 and Para 3 right here. So you're going to see what the Arrakis does very well. Despite its sort of freakish shape right here, it has a pretty good blade to handle ratio. It's got a rather compact handle like the Para 3, but it has as much or more blade than the Para 2. It's quite an impressive feat that such a strange looking knife also really maximizes that blade to handle ratio. I can bring out another couple of knives here that may be familiar to some of you. Here is the Koenig Knives Arius. You can see that it's a bit smaller than that. And just for fun, since I have it out here, here is my 3.5-inch Gareth Bull Shamwari. And one more just for fun, because this was a 3.5-inch blade. This does an even better job of maximizing that blade to handle ratio. Here is the Peter Rosenti Nirvana. Why do I bring this knife out? That is because Both of these knives embrace the integral construction or integral construction, however you would say it. The back of the handle on the Arrakis, as you can see just on the Nirvana, is a single piece of titanium. The Arrakis is not a true integral like the Nirvana, that's a single piece of titanium for the handle, but rather this incorporates a new build, like a new construction type that involves 3 separate pieces of titanium bolted together. We'll discuss that a little bit more as we go into the details of the handle, but that's what makes this knife truly exceptional. In addition to its visual stunning appearance, it also has a technological awesomeness to it that really begs to be analyzed. So let's go ahead and break this knife down anatomically and see what we're working with. Up front, as I mentioned, is that 3.5-inch blade of M390. If you take a look at the blade of the Eschaton, this is very similar. This knife is not meant to be your everyday carry slicer. Let's just put that out there. This blade was not designed to compete with the Paramilitary 2 because it never will. The blade stock, which I did not measure for you yet, is coming in here at 0.16, so rather thick blade stock. The handle thickness is 0.55 inches, so just over half an inch. The whole thing is a bit thick. And the fact that the blade is only ground to about halfway with a rather shallow hollow grind, and you can even see back here, there is quite a bit of material still left tapering down to that edge. It's not the thinnest ground thing. Now it will cut. It will do some basic EDC tasks. It will do hard push cuts, and you can cut through things like cardboard or zip ties or other things like that if you needed to. However, you just need to be aware this will not be an excellent slicer. It will also not be an excellent food prep knife because it's full of holes. Now, I appreciate that the holes on this blade are flowing with the rest of the design. When you close the knife, those holes are largely closed. They don't really line up with the rest of the holes in the handle. That is a thing that sort of gets to me. There's sort of a pseudo hole right here in the middle. It's just something that I've noticed. Anyways, the flats on the blade are done in a horizontal satin. The rest of the blade is covered in DLC. It's a pretty interesting blade. I think that it certainly sacrifices functionality for its form, but what it does have is great ergonomics. It has this nice thumb divot right here that you can put your hand on right there. I'm going to clean my hand off right there. Sorry about that. Okay, I've got a little nice thumb groove. It has a choil right here that really allows you to choke all the way up on the knife and use it like this. It also allows for that overhand grip that I've mentioned before. This is a grip that I really enjoy, and it really makes that very easy on this knife, so you can have a lot of control over that tip. Moving back to the pivot right here, this runs on Wii's ceramic ball bearing system, and in true Wii fashion, it is tuned quite well. It's very, very smooth. These knives, the Eschaton and the Arrakis, are really meant to be sort of the high-profile knives in the Wii lineup, and so they definitely take time to make sure that the action on these is great. The detent I would call medium and not heavy, but it is not a light detent. It's enough that even the casual flipper will be able to do that quite easily. However, it is going to be possible to soft fire the knife if you are not totally familiar with it. The angulation of the flipper tab is in true Elijah Isham fashion. This one has been rounded off so that it is not uncomfortable. Some of the early flipper iterations of his were quite sharp and a bit uncomfortable. This one is not, but it does allow for excellent grip so that the blade can be thrown out of the handle very nicely. It has a very smooth action and a very nice drop shut feel, a nice detent on the closure right there, and it is very secure in the handle. I really don't have much to complain about on the action. I do wish the detent was maybe a little bit crisper, a little bit stronger. It would have just made it a bit more of a dramatic thing, but that also increases the pressure you have to put on this point, and so I'm sure that they spent some time analyzing that, and this is what they landed with. I think it's just fine. It does have the Wii Knives logo on the pivot. I think this is getting a little long in the tooth. I would like to see that go away in favor of some more decorative pivots, and for Wii to find a way to integrate their logo elsewhere a little bit more tastefully. I think that now that Wii has really entered into the knife game, and especially into the higher end knife game, that they should really consider getting rid of these sort of budget looking pivots. I think that this detracts from their higher end knives and makes it look a little bit cheaper. I get it that it's a rather tasteful looking thing. If you didn't know it was the Wii logo, maybe you wouldn't even notice it, but it's on all of their knives, and I wish that, especially on a really sort of special knife like this, that they would have done something differently. But it is what it is. It is a nice pivot in the sense that it is constructed not to spin around, and so I can't complain too much more about that. Moving back to the handles, this is where the real art of this knife comes in. It is beautifully milled pieces of titanium. 3 pieces, in fact. Let's take a look at how they're integrated with each other. This back piece functions also as not only as the connecting piece, but also as the lock. If you take a close look, this piece is milled and continues all the way up to become the lock bar on this side with excellent lockup. There is a steel lock bar insert from what I can see in there. Yes, indeed there is. With a ceramic detent, you can see that there. And then the frame, this back part also continues up the other side to become a bolstering frame on this side, and it's paired, but you can also see that the lock bar side is slightly raised as compared to this side, and there is a finger cutout. So there's amazing milling and planning that went into creating this piece. And then it has all of these ventilated holes, and then it has these fixture points, 1, 2, 3, and 4, where these other pieces of blue anodized titanium bolt on to the subframe, and then those attach to the blade. Internally, you'll have the stop pin and all of those other things going on there. So it's quite a clever solution and a very elegant thing to see. Even though on this knife, perhaps it looks a little bit ridiculous with the overall design, the concept of how this knife is built could be brought into other models and really advance the knife game. It gets rid of the need for things like standoffs that you might see on other knives. Here you can see there's a backspacer, there's a standoff inside of there. Normally these knives are constructed with these 3 pieces, a backspacer. Here I'll bring out that terrible knife again with these backspacers. So it's an interesting and elegant solution to creating a more rigid knife with fewer parts, and so I really like that. I can't wait to see how this sort of construction type will be used in the future within the Wii lineup. I'm not sure if Wii has this as a proprietary thing right now. As a Chinese company, I'm not sure exactly what that means. We've seen other such solutions from companies like Zero Tolerance, where they have these semi-integral constructions, but this one is a very new take, and I think it's nice. How is the knife functionally? Well, as I mentioned, it's really not the best slicer in the world. It is interestingly ergonomic. I will say it doesn't fit my hand quite right. This very high finger groove right here, it doesn't really feel quite natural in the hand to really put your finger all the way in it, but it is, if you just hold it with a neutral hand grip, it's not uncomfortable. There are no hot spots in the regular grip. There are no hot spots in the overhand grip. In fact, the flared back right here fits quite nicely against the palm in this overhand grip for some pull cuts like that. So it does have very good ergonomics considering it looks so funny. I wouldn't say it has excellent ergos, but it's not uncomfortable in the hand. It may be just a little awkward, if anything else. All of this titanium construction brings the weight up a little bit compared to a standoff type knife, but it still stays right at 3.8 inches. It's just barely off of that 1-to-1 ratio of a 3.5 inch blade to 3.8 ounces. So overall, I really think that this knife tones down the craziness of the eschaton, but I don't think that it really brings this knife more into the EDC category. It really still is more of an art piece, and I don't know that I truly understand the need for this particular model, the Arrakis, other than to have a more affordable version of the eschaton. If you really like Elijah's designs and you really have enough knives that you can have an art piece in your collection, but perhaps you can't afford one of the true high-end custom art pieces, this is something to consider. If you appreciate clever engineering and clever design, this may be something you want to pick up. If you're looking for your next everyday carry slicer, this is certainly the wrong place to look, but you have to have an appreciation for what the knife is and not misunderstand it. It is a brilliant concept and a brilliant execution. Well done, We Knives, on making this actually even happen, and I can't wait to see how these technologies and how these abilities, look at how We Knives has milled all of this knife. It's just incredibly impressive. I can't wait to see how We Knives takes this forward with their own in-house designs, as well as incorporating designs from other makers. So I am impressed by this knife. I can't say that I would recommend it to everyone. This is a very specialty knife. But if this tickles your fancy, absolutely check out the We Knives Arrakis, designed by Elijah Isham. I will leave some information in the comments, in the description down below. Why don't you guys go ahead and leave some comments about what you think of the We Knives Arrakis. And go ahead, click like and subscribe to my channel. Head over to Instagram and follow me as Dr. Frunkey. Follow Elijah at Isham Blade Works. And as always, take care.